So I'm Bronwyn Charlesworth, and when I first became involved with this church, was as a really little girl. We went down to a little outreach Sunday school in Murray's Bay called the Outram Hall. And then there was a decision to build a church, and that was the Calvary Baptist Church up on the hill, and my parents started being involved with that. Well, our first pastor, our minister that was called, was the Reverend Royston Brown. And I remember distinctly he and his wife, she was so elegant, and they had been on the mission field in India. I remember Morris and Eleanor, I remember them as friends and of being our minister, and he was very much loved. He was a lovely, quiet man. In Mamie Billon, and she was the power behind the throne there a bit. She very, very well organised. Used to run the choir, and Roy he led well. Yes.
I first started coming to Murray's Bay when I was 12, and so that is over 40 years ago now. As a 12-year-old, I can't remember much, to be honest, but the pastor at the time was Graham Brogden.
Real loving couple and serving couple. Graham, I know everybody had to do everything in those days, and they had rosters for cleaning, and we had rosters for the kitchen, and Graham would be there doing the rubbish and sorting it out, and so he was a humble sort of leader, really. Yeah, spoke very, very well.
So we came from inner city Christchurch, Annette.
We did.
To beach Murray's Bay. What a incredible transformation.
Yeah.
The charismatic movement was an important aspect of church life in those days. It was just starting to really get going. Probably in the early days, I was a little cautious. I stepped back a bit. But together we kind of worked it all out. And I had a great group of deacons and church people who said, let's take the best bits out of the charismatic movement and believe that the Holy Spirit is in everything that we do, and let's embrace as much as we can and move forward.
And we did.
And it happened.
Yeah.
It sure did.
And he was.
Yeah, and the Holy Spirit gave us all sorts of interesting things that developed as the years rolled by. The youth work was just so strong and so many, there was no way that Annette and I and a few of the others could cope with it. And so the church very wisely said, well, let's invest in this, let's get a youth pastor. One
of the privileges I had was I worked for the first youth pastor we ever had. So it was a 1-year government paid scheme. And so I worked as his PA or secretary, and that was so much fun. He was awesome. He did a great job. I think one of the joys for me, having been here for so long, is seeing how the youth ministry has developed. So it went from volunteers organising Saturday night events, organising Bible studies on a Sunday, to today, when we've got a whole youth team. So to see that has been so exciting, and I just love what God is doing in our youth ministry today.
Easter 1980 was a tragedy time for the church. We had lots and lots of young people going to Easter camp. And 3 girls, one of them including our daughter, and a Bible class leader, Neil Jensen, were driving to Easter camp to Eastern Beach, and they'd lost their way somewhere in the Panmure area. They'd pulled over to the side of the road, put on the light to get a map out to work out where they were. But sadly, a drunk driver smashed into the parked car, and it caught fire, and Neil was killed. Terrible. Even today, I can't get over it.
It was not good.
I didn't expect that to come back like that. But that was a shock. And the 3 girls were injured. Sandy, our daughter, was in hospital for 3 months or so at Middlemore with back burns. And she was pulled out of the car by Janine Phipps. And so it was a tough time for the church. But boy, didn't they rally around and help to bring us through. And that's one of the reasons why we actually decided to buy a bus for the church to transport young people to camp and socials or wherever they might be, and to send this bus around the district to pick up kids on a Sunday.
Every Sunday morning, they did this route around the neighbourhood and picked up children that wanted to go to Sunday school. Our car broke down and we actually couldn't afford to fix it for a few months. So we started taking the bus so we could still get to church on a Sunday. And that's how we started going to Murray's Bay. And I'm really grateful that our car broke down, because the rest history, we are still part of this faith community. Yeah.
And the other major thing, perhaps, for me, of course, is Equip. It was called Te Araho in those days, the new pathway. Peter Wyatt, he began to recognise that there was going to be a great gap in the care for mental health, people with mental health issues. So they got this program underway, and I came on board, you know, when they'd done most of the hard work, which was fairly clever. I also got the job of being the manager. I had 4 hours work, and I had one staff member, and we started as a residential service. So the first house was bought, and we had 5 people in the first house. And we had to really prove that we were good, because everyone was looking at this Christian outfit who thought they could run something. So we were very, very, very fortunate that we got great help. And it grew and it grew. Wasn't very long before they asked for a second house. So we did, and that's how it continued. And then one of the best things I ever did was to employ Naomi, and that was fantastic, because when I stepped down, Naomi is still here, and it's just grown and grown and gone from strength to strength. And God has very definitely been in it right from the beginning, and is now. It's great.
At the beginning, we were very much a small, caring ministry of the church that were unashamedly Christian, and we were known as those Christians up at the Baptist church. Then we got a manager called Johnny Pullman, who the board hired after Annette Denham left, and she was great in her day. She really got the trust up and running. Then along came Johnny Pullman, and he professionalised us. He taught us how to set people up to have meaningful friendships, genuine friendships, and find work. And so it became more professional at that stage. That was challenging, and we had to redefine for the church, what does this ministry mean? Because suddenly it wasn't something that everyone could get involved in. And then the big challenge was really the board said when I got into the role, hey, we've got to grow or we're going to die. And so we went pretty quickly from, half a dozen staff to 20, and now we have about 80. And we had to actively go and look for new work that was meaningful to the core purpose of why Equip, we rebranded, Equip, exists, but also stayed true to the Christian DNA and the Christian response to need.
The old Murray's Bay site. It was a lovely building, but it was in a very awkward place. That was always a problem.
The church was growing gradually, and it had always been the idea, Barry's idea, to purchase additional properties or to make further developments in the church. And Barry promoted that, but he was turned down at meetings.
For three times we came to the church with plans to develop the old building. We were going to go up the back somehow. We were going to buy a house from the neighbour somehow. We were going to move around and make it better. And I determined that we wouldn't make any move unless we got a strong vote. And I said, it's got to be 75%. But we never cracked the 75 mark. which I guess in the end made me feel a bit despondent. And I thought, oh, heck, what's happening, Lord? And by the time 1987 had come, people were saying I was looking a bit ragged, and I was feeling a bit ragged. And with the third turnaround of not getting the building through, I thought, Lord, time to go.
Somebody else's job.
Someone else can take over now. Find something new for me. And he did.
Well, when we first started coming to the church, Barry Denham was just coming to the end of his pastorate. And then, the delight for us was that David and Linda Marriott were called to be the senior pastors at Murray's Bay, and we were so blessed through those years. David was also very godly, good man, and he was so good to us as a family. He was an encourager. They were good years for us as a family, and for me, growing in my faith, for James and I, serving and being part of a church community that again was always looking outward to others, not just inward at ourselves, equipping us to be better as Christians and doing a faith journey along the way. So, very impactful years for us. So then, coming to the end of David's time as our senior pastor, we called Brian and Liz Winslade, and Brian was the senior pastor. And prior to Brian coming, again, there was this ongoing conversation and ideas being raised about how can we do this differently. Everyone was out of ideas.
So the whole journey to Windsor Park from Murray's Bay, for me, actually began on the night of my induction. I made a flippant, facetious comment looking around. I think we might need to relocate at some stage. And we had my first elders meeting the next week. And at that meeting, I proposed, why don't we start a relocation task force? They said yes to this. And so we formed it. We had a bunch of people that were part of that team. And the day, I think it was about 4 o'clock on the day before we had a breakfast meeting, Noel Williams, one of the elders, he sent me a fax.
So Noel felt led by God. He had this vision to find a new location that could solve the problem of parking and allow for the church to continue to grow. Over a period of time, Noel looked for alternative church sites, scanning the Herald newspaper daily. And in one of these sessions, he discovered the tender notice for Windsor Park Hotel. Well, it was a scream and a yell. I found the church site. I think my cheekiness, I said, good luck. But no, it was a thing where we prayed very daily and often. Noel contacted Brian Winslade to discuss the opportunity to use this centre as our new church building.
And Noel said, I think we ought to go and have a look. And so we agreed we'd do that if really to get it off the agenda. We didn't think we could ever afford it. It was way beyond us. So a group of us, I can't actually remember exactly who it was. I think Noel probably was there. And we walked through these buildings here at Windsor Park. And we had this epiphany kind of experience, really. We looked at each other and said, this could work. And so we must have got the elders together again pretty well straight away after that. But within a week, we called an unconstitutional meeting of the members of the church on a Sunday afternoon and to talk about this idea, what about buying the Windsor Park Hotel? The comments were made, we ought to explore this further. So again, another task force was set up that did all the due diligence and got the program together. And we were all geared up to have a special members meeting. Pretty sure it was the 16th of August, actually, 1995, where we were going to put to the church that we sell up Murray's Bay and buy the Windsor Park Hotel Complex for $2.8 million, which was a lot of money, actually, in those days. I mean, these days, that's the price of an East Coast based house, right? But we had been negotiating with the Trust Bank, as it was then, and at the last minute, the head office for the Trust Bank in Wellington said no. And we found out about that rejection by the bank on the night of the church members' meeting. So I felt physically ill over that and thought, what's the point of having the church members' meeting? And John Wanhall and Martin Norrie and I, we met in a cafe in Rothsay Bay. And Martin said to me, I've got an idea. Trust me.
So when that was announced in the meeting, Martin Norrie suggested to us that we form a group of people who was willing to put part of their equity in their homes up as in second mortgages to the bank, so the bank would loan us the money. What we needed was $1 million. So 10 of us, I think it was at the meeting, decided that we could manage this. So 10 of us put up $100,000 each on a second mortgage in our homes. And once we had that organized, the bank agreed to loan us the money.
The hotel we purchased came with a block of land, I don't know how many acres it was, which was later subdivided and sold out as sections to reduce the church loans. It was not long after this process that Noel died. The subdivision needed a street name, and Brian Winslade approached the family saying that the church membership and the council had agreed that the street be named Noel Williams Place. As a family, we were a bit taken back, but we have been honoured by this kind gesture.
The other miracle from that church meeting for me, when it came to the vote, it was actually, I think from memory, it was an 86% majority. So there was a clear mandate. And what made it controversial at times and made it rather newsworthy was that we, as a commercial decision, we needed to actually keep the tavern keeper who leased the building in place. It needed to run so that they would pay rent that would help us cover the mortgage and that sort of thing. So effectively, Murray's Bay Baptist Church bought an operating pub.
There were some for whom that was a little bit of a stumbling block. Yet we were able to mostly move past that because of this missional focus, that we were being equipped and preparing for the works God has prepared in advance for us to do, where we get to put our faith into action for the sake of others. And that was very much the theme even back then. You know, we arrived in this place and it was dirty, it was smelly.
The whole building stank. The carpets were wet with beer. Some of the ceilings were messy and yellow with smoke.
And I had to try and find a room and get a carpet cleaner in to clean this ancient carpet that smelt like beer and vomit and cigarette smoke, so that the little kids in the kids' church area had room. So, you know, we just had to roll our sleeves up and do whatever it took to gather as the people of God in this place. And it was very imperfect. We were camping, really, in the facilities while we worked out what needed to be renovated or fixed or cleaned next.
It was grotty. And we kind of said to ourselves, the church is the people, not the buildings. When we actually moved in, and it was Queen's birthday weekend, 1996 now, by the time we actually moved in, I invited a number of pastors and churches to come and be with us as we prayed through the building.
Before it was open to the general members or those that came, every room of the building had been prayed for. The Bible had been read, Genesis to Revelation, night and day, continuously by people. That was a wonderful time. The day of the opening, we had circled the building. Everybody held hands right round the building. And the elders prayed, and the prayers were offered for God's blessing.
There were trumpeters who were on the verandas outside and on the low roof who kind of heralded us in, and we came in to the sound of worshipping and formally dedicated the place to the Lord.
The doors were opened. It was so exciting. I still remember that. The church was filled and overflowing. We felt God had blessed us in a very special way.
So it was still pretty grotty. It was the Lord's place. We owned it, but it was grotty. We were quite adamant on this whole thing that the church was the people, not the building. And that was right for the first few years. But then after we'd been here a while, that began to actually swing around the other way, and we started to get feedback from new people coming in and saying, is this what you think of God, this grotty structure? And it occurred to us at that point that actually architecture and buildings are part of our communication. For the people that we wanted to reach, particularly seekers coming in, we were actually giving a negative impression, negative message. And that was a real impetus to raise money to do it up.
So through that time, there was every step of the way, this is the next bit that we have to work on. We need an auditorium to gather in. And, it was an old pub, so low gungy ceilings, the acoustics were dreadful, grotty carpet, it was pretty messy. So we packed up and we went and we moved our Sunday services to Kriston, to the school there, to the auditorium there, so that this place could get stripped out and rebuilt. And so that had to be done. And then, just room by room or area by area, as finance allowed, as need dictated, the next bit was done.
What I saw at some of these large churches in the States was the creation of a cafe type area. So I came back with this idea, and at that stage, I was probably the only one in the church that had seen what this could be like. So it took a while to be able to sell this dream. And then finally, after several goes, we had raised enough money to build it.
As the eldership team, one day we met down in this area, and the architect, he came down and was talking to us about his concept and asking us what we needed. He visually, I guess, creatively designed that space around the brief and the conversation, which actually just stemmed out of who we were as a faith community. Community focused, facing our community, saying, you're welcome, we'll journey with you, we care about you.
The staff team, when I first came, I was the fourth. There were 3 pastors and an office worker. Jackie Wanhill was an interesting situation because Jackie was employed to do pastoral care, but she kept on leading people to the Lord. So we changed Jackie's job description, and she became responsible for evangelism and outreach. And so we had to appoint somebody looking for pastoral care. Well, Sue Ogilvie was on the eldership at the time, and we were discussing this.
And I always, I guess, had a heart to care for others, or to see that care happened in the church. And I think at pretty much one of the last elders meetings that I was at, Brian Winslade told us that, him and a couple of the other pastors at the time had been talking, and they think they found the right person for this pastoral role.
And they also looked forward and said, okay, yeah, who's this going to be? I said, Sue, I think it's you.
Honestly, the wind was knocked out of me. I couldn't speak. It's one of those goldfish moments because I had never envisaged that was actually for me. I was a busy mum. I had 5 kids, but I did have a heart for the local church. I did love what this church was doing missionally. So I knew that there was something there, but there was a great deal of fear. There was a lot of, I could go on for ages about the discernment and the story around that, but the rest is history, really.
One of the things that I really honour and remember about Windsor Park was the faithfulness of the people who'd been there for many years beforehand, our senior saints, for the want of a better term. And I just tip my hat to them. They recognised that their era of control was over, and they became prayer warriors for the future. That's I think a rare gift that they have given to the foundation of this church.
And then Grant joined the team. So we had this younger leader coming through, but a man who was very visionary, who was clear on the call of God on his own life and has stayed true to that call to this day.
The main reason that I felt called to come here is that I definitely have a heart for the marketplace. And I just felt God say to me that it would be at Windsor Park where I'd be able to work that out. I think Windsor Park I would class as being a relatively mature church at that stage. You know, demographics were spread right across. The church was, 57 years old at that stage. So, yeah, people that have been around for a long time. Obviously, lots going on. I love that. I love the buzz of it. Yeah, we found it a really, different but invigorating atmosphere to come into. Yeah, there's been a few significant things that have happened over this time. The church transitioning through to what it is to be multicultural. How do we do that? We didn't train for that, and just adjusting to that. And that's been, it's been a big work for us over the years. I think also, growing our span of ministries over the last 13 years, when I think of all of them, both our church ministries, we've continued to adapt and see what's current, see what's relevant for us. Equip has grown over that time. It's a huge asset to who we are as a community, having specialization around mental health. And then looking at the front gate and one day sitting in my office and thinking, man, it'd be really great to own that McDonald's site one day for us as a church, so strategic at our front gate. So I wrote a letter to the CEO of McDonald's and said, if you ever do anything with your Windsor Park site, let me know. Didn't expect to get a phone call a month later from their property manager who said, did you know that we are, looking at moving? So would you be interested in buying our site? And I took a gulp and said, yes, I'd be interested. But I guess from there began a whole process for us of looking at what we would do with that site, thinking childcare could be a possibility, but being able to consider a range of other things, but kind of ending up seeing the birth of Small Fries a few years later. And then I think just growing that ministry and seeing the growth of the hub and how we go about being the church in the marketplace. Obviously, Windsor Creative was born not long after that. Then we took over New Hope on Waiheke Islands. And then, we've birthed Windsor Funerals. Out of that, we've played with several other things as well. So seeing that grow and develop, and I guess now, kind of maybe a decade later, seeing some of the fruit coming out of that is something that is special to me, because that's a big part of my heart. I guess that's what I've kind of brought to the table and the gifts that God has given me. But then also seeing, the Life Care Trust be born.
As Grant came on board and then we began to work on how we were going to become this church who continues to put our faith into action, we were able to see that we needed a vehicle to do that, and that was to form this trust. So we've got 5 project areas that sit under the Life Care Trust now. And that's the counselling centre, the work we do with our family care, starting up a family law clinic, our CAP debt centre and our money courses. And we had the opportunity to engage in 24 youth work. And so together with Windsor Park Baptist Church and the 2 local schools, Murray's Bay Intermediate and Rangitoto College now, which is new on stream, we've got 4 youth workers now working in the schools. And then our 5th and latest project is Haven Pregnancy Support. And we've established this project that serves and reaches out to women when there is an unintended pregnancy, to give them a time and a place to consider their options and have support with what those options are. And so all these things form Windsor Park Life Care Trust.
So 2020 rocks around, and it kind of started like most years, and I guess we were a little bit excited for the year. And then February came, and this word coronavirus started popping up. And then March came, and we found ourselves heading into this lockdown. And there will be days that I will never forget. The excitement, I guess, and fear of having to fully do a live stream service with no one here on site, barring our techs. And I think we had 20 people in total. I mean, it was quite exhilarating, but it was quite scary. But we look back on it and we think, previous to that, we had started live streaming, we had invested in some cameras, we had some gear. So the change to actually do that wasn't all that big. It was just that this whole new world had been forced upon us. And then we jumped into level 4 lockdown and we had to completely change all over again. And, we look back on that time, and again, I feel in my heart that God kind of prepared us for it. We had, even for our staff, our computer systems were fully in the cloud by that time. We literally could pick up our laptops and go home and work from home. And so we just found that to be a time where you had to pivot just, almost every week. There was new challenges and people were working out how do we care for one another, how do we deal with our families, and all the different situations that we were facing. But as a church thinking, this is, no one expected this. But at the same time, it actually forced us to change and to pivot and to be creative and seek to minister to our community in ways that we hadn't done before. Out of that, forced us to start thinking about, so what does the church look like in the future? The new normal, as people call it. And that will still take some time to work out. But we took the attitude to embrace that and think, what good can come out of this? So an online campus that I could see today, we're the only Baptist church in the country doing it the way that we're doing it. And so you could say, are we stupid doing it this way? I guess at this point I'm saying, no, I feel that this is what God would have us to do. And we're able to connect with people in ways that we haven't done before. We're connecting with people outside of Auckland in ways that we haven't done before. And we're just hearing these stories that keep coming up of people that probably don't engage with us on the actual platforms, but they're there. And when they're ready, they engage with us. I guess we just kind of feel that we were able to start something that when we look back in maybe 5 or 10 years, we think at this point that it'll be super fruitful for us as the church transitions into being not just a place where people gather physically on our site, but how we can do that in online ways as well. And I think out of that also, in 2020, being able to integrate fully Waiheke Island as a campus model, and again, developing what a campus model looks like. So they watch our sermons on a screen at their campus and work hard at their community as they seek to develop a church on the island. So again, the production side of that is something that's new to us. So really at this point, we're saying, we are a multi-campus church. We've moved quite quickly from being just Mairangi Bay to be Mairangi Bay, Waiheke Islands, and an online campus that reaches into people's lives in a whole range of different places. So yeah, 2020, again, no one prepares you for this. No one prepares you for a worldwide pandemic and how to be the church in that place. They didn't train me for that at Kerry. But, it's been a wonderful experience of learning and growth and challenge that I guess we have chosen to embrace and to grow out of and see where God takes it.
Yes, once you start to ponder, 70 years is quite a long time, isn't it? And yet so much hasn't changed. And I think always that Jesus has been at the centre.
I think our byline that we have of doing life and faith together is actually what I've experienced over the 40 years. And I just love that we are really better together and we do need each other. And that's why I'm so sort of passionate about church and doing life and faith together, because it just does make a difference. It made a difference for me, and I'm hoping that I can make a difference for other young people in church today.
I think my challenge to the people of Windsor Park would be, look at your past, look at what you've achieved, because it's been great, but it's only a stepping stone to what's going to happen in the future. God's got big plans for Windsor Park and its people.
My hopes and dreams for us as a faith community is that we continue to be outward focused, looking to serve our community, care for one another, be relevant to what's going on out there in the world, and to be courageous enough to change shape and do church differently as often as we need to.
And I hope it continues to be very much a multicultural church. I mean, I've come to appreciate that aspect of it very much. Yeah, now we have Chinese and Koreans and so many different people that I think it's healthy, it's encouraging.
So my encouragement to people that are kind of at Windsor Park now is to celebrate who we are as a community, to celebrate what God has done in the past, and for all of us to be part of that continued transformation, to continue to be a people that have the courage to step outside of our comfort zones and do things in different ways. I would like to think that we will continue to grow into be an empowering culture, a culture that sees the potential in every person, that sees the gifts and abilities that God has placed into every person and allows people to grow and develop and to experiment and to make mistakes and to give things a try.
What's next? What's the next big adventure? Windsor Park hasn't arrived. It's on a journey. It's carrying on. And, there is a very, very significant resource that God has deposited in the life of this church. Where does that need to be deployed next for His glory?
I think we have no idea how much God can really work through us if we take the first step. And so my encouragement would be, if you feel a nudge, even if you don't feel adequate and you don't feel ready, pursue it and go on the journey with God, because we're His solution for the world. And I just really hope people feel brave enough, even if they are tired, even if they feel inadequate, to listen to the nudge from God and take the first step. That's how our world gets better. That's how our communities get healthier, as one person at a time responding and stepping up.
Hey, well done, Windsor Park. It's been great to see it moving on to 70 years, and we've been thrilled with the developments that we've known about here. And we just want to pray that God's richest blessing and strongest power will be with you through all the years ahead, and that all kinds of ministries will develop that will bring honour to His name and people into the kingdom. Absolutely. Bless you all heaps. We love you.